Hello all, this is Skinny. Welcome to my safe space, the only place I feel safe. Today I'd like to talk about professional wrestling. Professional wrestling's always been sort of like a constant in my life, whether it's casually or even just mostly just catching highlights at this time. But when I was a kid, my father, my brother, and my mother would watch Raw and SmackDown. Earliest memories of professional wrestling, I watched the tail end of, I think it was SmackDown, the feud between Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio. When the passing of Eddie Guerrero happened, as a kid, you don't really kind of like understand it too much. My favourite wrestler was Rey Mysterio, because when I was a kid I really liked Spider-Man, so the superhero part always attracted me to his character and just the moves he would do, like the West Coast pop, even just the dives in general, and just the way he ran around the ring, avoiding the bigger wrestlers. It was only until I got older where I actually started enjoying characters like Kurt Angle, Eddie Guerrero, Randy Orton, even, wrestlers like Christian Cage over in AEW. And as I got older, for a time I did enjoy John Cena. And up until about 2011, I stopped watching wrestling as a weekly show and just stuck to watching highlights on YouTube, or just probably YouTube highlights. Found that when it concerned interesting characters and stories later on, especially during I know there's a lot of memes about it, where you've got the Super Cena era, and it just became very predictable, where his character would, use a really good example would be the SummerSlam match with the Nexus, where Cena takes a DDT on the concrete. So DDT is like front face lock, hook of the arms instead of the head, and plant him straight on the concrete floor outside the ring, which is usually a match ender or something like that. It's a very debilitating move. It's like getting hit in the head with a chair, or hit with the belt, or something like that. And he got back in the ring, put a last minute submission on, I believe it was Justin Gabriel, and then did the same thing to Wade Barrett to end the match. And the thing is, it's kind of like one of those things. It's like they say like a comeback finish. And there were matches where I'd watch Cena get beaten up he'd lose 80% of the match and then pull a last 20, the last couple of minutes he'd pull out a Hail Mary finish. And the character of John Cena became very predictable and very stale. And when you invest in other characters, when you like other characters like a Rey Mysterio or a Bray Wyatt, or even an Undertaker or a Batista, or even, I know there are Triple H fans out there, but even Edge and Randy, like Randy Orton's peak was 2008 and 9. I'm going to say both those years, because that's when he started actually coming out and being I'm going to say, very unique, became the Viper himself, you know. Very much a menace. And John Cena never really freshened up his character. It was kind of like, where, like, I don't care about, like, when it concerns attire, it doesn't really bother me, you know. Like, Rey Mysterio changed up his attire now and then, but then everyone loved Rey. It was kind of like a constant where he wasn't over pushed, he wasn't used too much. I mean, he was used a lot, but it's kind of like one of those things. He didn't need 10 or 15 world titles to establish himself. Like, in the end, those championships are, I know it's stupid, it's an asshole thing to say, but they're props, and the fact is they're supposed to be treated. It's kind of like, because I know a lot of people might say wrestling is fake and everything like that. Well, so are movies and TV shows. You know, like watching movies like Star Wars. Sad thing to say is the fictional universe is created by a director. It's the same thing with wrestling, where they're just a fictional universe where the wrestlers are very much stuntmen, also characters and actors on top of that. But I think when people say wrestling is fake and crap on it in that way, is they come off as very much older, jaded fans who felt insulted by the stories that they were watching, because they had mates with them who they tried to get into wrestling and they looked stupid because of it, because they showed them, you know, horrendous moments in wrestling, or tried to get them into wrestling, and it just came off as, oh, that's dumb. And I think when people say wrestling is fake, it's saying it's dumb. It's dumb television. And I'm not going to crap on anyone's preferences. If you like professional wrestling, if you don't, if you like any of the other promotions, whether it's PWG, AEW, WWE, TNA, you're allowed to have your preferences. Like, it doesn't really matter. It's kind of like, oh, well, if you like watching it, then you like watching it. You don't need to defend it like it's better than everything else, because it isn't. Some people like WWE, some people like other things. And I know I've gone off track a bit, but that's what happens when I'm just talking about my thoughts, like just going off my head instead of scripting. And when it concerns professional wrestling, and it's the reason why I kind of like became less of a fan and more of a casual viewer. Like, I understand the risks that these wrestlers take. I've done the research, but I don't stand and talk about all the nuances of it, and all the inside knowledge and inside things, because the most important thing to anything to get invested in is storytelling. And it's the most important thing that they have control over, that other companies, and I'd say personally would be something like the UFC, where someone like, and I'm not going to insult this guy because he did a very good job, but someone like Chael Sonnen in the UFC, where he always came close to getting a world title, but there was always something that happened in those fights. Like, he never definitively got the belt wrapped around him. But he was still very much a pay-per-view draw for the UFC, because he would build up the stories. He would create these stories. He would build these feuds with Anderson Silva, is his biggest one, where he would insult the country of Brazil, where Silva was from, and they were polar opposites in a lot of ways, where Anderson Silva was a very respectful martial artist, while Chael Sonnen said he was a fighter, and he would brag about his upbringing and everything like that. Like, he would bring so much into these fights that people would be invested. One example that actually probably did a lot better would be Conor McGregor, early Conor McGregor, where the guy was just hungry. You know, he built, he trash talked, but there was also stories. The biggest pay per view that the UFC ever did was Conor McGregor and Khabib Nurmagomedov. I know I butchered his last name, but yeah, that's what happens when you're an Australian trying to pronounce a Russian surname. But there was a multiple years of story in that where Khabib wanted, he didn't want to fight Conor, but he was like, he would fight him while Conor built a lot of it up, and the drama involving mostly Conor's side, where Conor was attacking the bus full of UFC fighters. I don't want to spend too much time on MMA, but there's the storytelling aspect to that, where WWE would have that to their advantage, and should have that to their advantage. And around 2014, 2015, wrestling, they were trying to push Roman Reigns. I say push, I mean elevate him, give him more opportunities. And this was during the time where people were invested in Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan was this plucky little underdog wrestler with a very good technical ability in the ring. And he wasn't a very big guy. He was kind of like a little hairy guy. But people liked him as a person. I don't know what they liked about him. I'm not faulting anything. It's one of those things. The crowd attached to him. While Roman Reigns, they were trying to push him, and the biggest issue with him in his early career was once, like when the Shield split. Now the Shield were a faction of 3 young guys plucked from NXT to the main roster, attacking, I believe it was Ryback at Survivor Series, or something like that. I think it was, Ryback and CM Punk. And these 3 dudes were like, now there's been interviews where they've talked about afterwards, and they laid stuff in to make sure that the people on screen, and I mean laid it in, I mean they actually didn't bash the living crap out of people, but they were making sure that they were protected, their ability was protected, because wrestling, because it's very much a scripted and controlled thing where it is simulated fighting. That's the best way I can put it. They made sure that the wrestlers they were attacking didn't make their stuff look like a joke, because if you, I'm going to say, light punch someone and they don't react the right way, it makes you look stupid. So they made sure that these people did, or these other wrestlers didn't make them look stupid. So these were 3 young, hungry guys fighting for opportunity. And once the faction split, once Seth Rollins had betrayed his 2 mates, his brothers, he branched off. He got his own entrance theme and got his own entourage and got his own character, and was building upon that. And he would, like, he was this, I'm going to say, they say a chicken shit bad guy, where he would run away when things got a little too tough or a little too difficult. While Dean Ambrose, the other character, or the other guy, he was the one who was more emotionally affected by the breakup, where he was, something broke within him, and the only way he could try and is try and get it back. That's why those 2 feuded directly for some time. And because he wanted to get that back, because that was a big moment where that was his brother that betrayed him, and so he was emotionally broken. That's the only way I can really rationalize it. Well, Roman Reigns seemed to be, he got the Shield theme in the split, so they kept the good theme on him, but they didn't. And I know he did get legitimately injured not long after that, so it kind of slowed down any sort of momentum. But he didn't seem to care, like his character, I mean, and they kept him as the same character. Like they didn't give him too much, and they didn't give the crowd anything for him to latch onto. Like in, but then from 2014 to about 2016 were pretty rough years for the WWE. But yeah, like it's pretty bad. Well, it was pretty bad, and they had him winning. I think it was like back to back Royal Rumbles, and then they did that odd thing with Triple H, the Mania. That was it. The feud where he beat Roman at the Rumble, won the WWE title, and then I don't know what happened after, but they had a match at Mania where the fans hated it. It was like a 35-minute match of we don't like either guy, so we don't care. And they just and yeah, I'd say like there was verbal things like during talking segments where Roman said something that just, why are you saying that, man? Like why? People pointing out like suffering succotash and him forgetting lines and then Cena crapping on him. And Cena turned around and said, you're corporately created and like a corporately created Cena bootleg, The thing is, Cena was also to a degree corporately created as well, with the merchandise and everything like that, and being a machine for that. And even in interviews, Cena will refer to WWE as we. He doesn't refer to WWE as a separate company. He believes WWE is a part of WWE. He is a part of WWE. He's like an employee, even though they're really subcontractors. And with Roman, he didn't have anything they didn't give him anything to sink his teeth into. And I mean it in a way where they didn't give, and I'm not saying they give him a stupid character, but when he did the recent stuff with the Tribal Chief stuff, all we want is what he looked like was a badass Samoan with a striking look, and that's it. Like, that's all we wanted. We needed a bit more from him. We didn't want boring cookie cutter. It's like, here's your crumbs and enjoy it. And it's like, well, this is crap. We don't like it. Well, get over it. And the thing is, they didn't get over it. People turned off the telly. People didn't want to watch it anymore. And for me personally, because I stopped about the time when the Shield debuted, like I watched a little bit after that, but then remained a casual fan because I felt like as I got older, I felt there wasn't a lot of characters for me to invest in because they weren't winning, if that makes any sense. They weren't winning matches or having good moments or having awesome feuds or anything like that. Like for me, it's not what they did in the ring, it's more what leads up to the ring. Why should I invest in this? It's the same with, like I say, with their world titles. Like the WWE Championship is a lineage all the way back to Bruno Sammartino and Buddy Rogers, like going all the way back when those guys were legitimate athletes, like they had legit amateur backgrounds. While now a lot of guys have football backgrounds because they can do it, because they're athletic. Like they don't have, like the last legitimate like world champion in WWE, and I mean legitimate like wrestling pedigree, would be Kurt Angle. And at the moment, they've got Chad Gable, who is a legit amateur wrestler with a Olympic level pedigree, and that's awesome. And like, it's awesome to see him doing well and succeeding and getting all these highlights. And when it concerned like storytelling, like the 2016 or I say, like, there was bad years, and even later on, like, there's still some stuff that's just, why'd they do that? You know what I mean? Why would you do it this way when there's 10 other ways you could have did it easier? And the one match I did, that brought me kind of back into wrestling, stupidly enough, that I watched and went, whoa, what the hell? Was the Fiend stuff that Bray Wyatt did. His previous character, the Eater of Worlds character, had, I'm going to say, crashed out, where it wasn't looked at as legitimate, like it was delegitimized, if that makes any sense, from storytelling perspective and other things. And he wasn't given a fair go, but then it is very hard, I'd say, in WWE now, but I'll talk about that a bit later once I've cleared this up. But it was the Fiend versus the Seth Rollins match at Hell in a Cell 2019, where I just noticed, like, when I watched that match, I'm like, why'd they make the cage red? Like, and then they made the lights red, which was even, I found it funny, because I'm like, why? And as the match kept going along, I'm like, what are they doing? Like, what's happening? And then at the end of the match, where the ref calls it a no contest, and there's a clip of X-Pac reacting where he's like, how the hell can you get a no contest in a Hell in a Cell match? And I just laughed. And not long before that, not long after that, it was, stupidly enough, it was the second no contest finish in like the 2 years of the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. The one with Brock, Roman, and it was the one where Brock did the run-in on Roman and Strowman. And it was like, oh, no contest. Brock came in and beat the crap out of everyone. It was like, okay. But it became very unforgettable because I think Brock was on a sabbatical after Mania or something like that. So no one cared. But this one, it caused a lot of damage in a way where it ruined Seth Rollins as a legitimate world champion. Like, all that effort that he put into it, like into his IC stuff, and then his world title feud to legitimize his character, it killed him because it made him this scared. It turned him into a pussy. And I mean the character, not the actual guy. It turned the character into a pussy. So why invest in a pussy, you know? And it made the Fiend look stupid because he was just taking finishes, like he was taking the curb stomp, which was made Seth Rollins' legit finisher. So a finisher is the finish of the match. That's why it's called a finisher. It's the final move of the match. And it just made him it made his finish look stupid, and it made the Fiend look stupid because all he did was just take it. Like, he just took the finish over and over and over and over, and he kept getting up. And the thing is, it's a big difference between having a character that's persevering, like in a I Quit match or something like that, where the character just keeps taking it and it refuses to give up, and will keep getting back up. But it's different when you're letting a dude do his finish on you, like, over and over and over and over. And it ruined Seth Rollins entirely, where the dude had to do a 180 and redefine himself. And it ruined the Fiend's character because, I'll just say it made him look dumb because he's just taking this stuff. He's just taking it. He's fighting back a little bit, but he's not actually doing anything major. And afterwards, and then the ref yeah, he put like a ladder in a toolbox and then went to hit him with a sledge, and then the ref went, "Oh, no contest," like he went, "No, I can't let you kill him anymore, no contest." And then when they're wheeling him out, the Fiend attacks him at the end, and then the fans, because the fans obviously crapped on it because they're sitting there and they want to have a good time, but they paid tickets, they paid for things. So I always look at it as, if you're paying audience, like, because they're a paying audience, like, this is where WWE's money comes from. And it comes from live attendance and everything like that. There is streaming and all that, but when people are paying good money and good tickets to see something interesting, like, the whole thing was just it fell to bits. It was it was one of those things. I found it, you like, thinking about it, I'm like, you've just killed everything in this match you could have possibly done, when you didn't have to have the Fiend, because the Fiend, the Bray Wyatt character, he was doing these vignettes beforehand, and he hadn't had any feuds, he hadn't had any matches. I think he had like one where he attacked like Mick Foley and Kurt Angle, like legends, leading up beforehand. So he was doing these attack segments. So he never really had any feuds. So he was a brand new character, and they just put him in a main event feud for some reason. So you got a brand new character, and you got a world champion that you want to, I assume, invest in, and you've just killed everything all in one night. I found it was like one of those things. It was like a case study for me. It's a case study in what not to do. Like, if I were to talk about how to kill some, like, professional wrestling in like a night, and I'm not saying professional wrestling like, if you want to bankrupt your company in one night, that's how you go. That's what you do. There are probably worse things that have happened, like the Saudi Arabia shows, the Vince ones. Well, I'm going to say the earlier ones, where they had old fellas coming out having matches in, say, 40-degree heat in the middle of the desert for, and I'm not, like, when it concerns like political regimes and everything like that, but and then having, I think it was like the Brothers of Destruction versus DX in Saudi Arabia. That one was pretty rough to watch. And then you've got the Goldberg and Undertaker one, where Undertaker lands on, I don't want to swear, but he lands on his bloody head by a concussed Goldberg, because Goldberg had rammed his head into, from what the story was, he always does this hype up thing in the locker room in the back, where he bashes his head on something, like on a door or on a vending machine, and then that hypes him up, amps him up, just so he can do his entrance. But he did that, and he ended up hurting himself, and then he hurts himself by ramming his head into the turnbuckle, the post, during the match. I was like, oh no. And watching him damn near kill Undertaker, yeah. Those came up as highlights, I think, afterwards. Like, a lot of stuff, I didn't really care. Like, there wasn't any good stories happening. Like, there's always going to be feuds, and it got to a point where WWE were just like, oh, well, we're going to do it our way and screw the audience. But the fact is, I find you need your audience to invest in your stories. The storytelling is the most important thing in wrestling, and so, yeah, when it concerns storytelling before matches, after matches, that's the most important thing. Like, I know a lot of people like the I'm gonna say the flips characters, like Ricochet and Will Ospreay early career. Like, Will Ospreay, I'd say, has gotten a lot better since then. But you can do, like, I've watched, was it the Young Bucks, their matches, and like during 2016 there was this kind of like hype when they were in Ring of Honor in Japan, and I think it's because a lot of it they were attached to Kenny Omega, who was their top guy in Japan. And I'd never watched any of, like, this is like leading up to AEW in 2019, 2020. Like, I saw a couple of pictures of Cody Rhodes. I'm like, why is he blonde? You know? Like, I found that weird. And I'm like, I know it's a dye job, bro. Like, you're a brunette naturally. Like, you're not a blonde. But, yeah, like, I'm like, why is Cody blonde and wearing a suit? And I watched that when AEW started because it was something different. It was something refreshing. I watched a couple of the first episodes. So they put them up on YouTube. So I watched them. And I watched when they started, I'm like, I don't know who, like, I didn't care about the whole presidency or everything like that. It was just refreshing to see a new company come up with a lot of momentum. And I watched the segment with Cody where he's in the white suit. Like, I knew who Chris Jericho was and everything like that, so I knew some of the players, but I'd never seen a Kenny Omega match before. I never went out of my way, but I heard a lot of hype involving him. And I watched, I think it was the first one I watched. I watched the one he did with Mox, who's the former Dean Ambrose, because I was aware of Dean Ambrose. I knew who he was, so I watched their match. It was the one where he was like, he suplexed him into like that spider web, barbed wire net. That one. I watched that one. And I'm like, oh, okay, this guy, I mean, like, I like the knee strikes. I think knees are good. It's like the one thing that I've noticed is when one wrestler is doing something cool, a lot of other wrestlers pick it up. It's like they try to replicate it, but they can't perfect it. Like super kicks, which is I always associate with Shawn Michaels. The super kick out of nowhere. He's you know, like and even tooting up the band where he's in the corner pumping it up or whatever. Well, a lot of wrestlers do it now. And you can see how they slap the leg to make that sound. Like, you can see the technique. And I'm like, oh, you know, like, you're never going to beat the original. You know what I mean? But watching Kenny Omega, I'm like, oh, okay, he moves pretty well. He's alright. And I'm like, oh, okay, you know, like, I wasn't. But I expected. I'm not going to say I was disappointed, but I think it was one of those things. They hype him up and hype him up, and it's like I expected him to walk on water or something. But I'm like, no, he's good. Like, he's good. I'd say he's about as good, and I mean was good. I mean, like, he's had a lot of injuries since I watched him the first time. But if I were to say, putting on a really good match, he'd be about Seth Rollins level. And it's not insulting either. Go, I mean, prime Seth Rollins, not where he's at now, where his knees are absolutely wrecked and he's had to slow down quite a bit. But I'm gonna say prime. Like, if those two are in their prime, you'd have a really, really interesting and really good match. But as for, like, because I don't look at it like when it concerns professional wrestling for the move set. I don't watch it for the flips and stuff. Like when I mentioned the Young Bucks, it seems that they have like 3 or 4 finishing moves, like the Meltzer driver, the double knee lift to the head. Then there's the super kick party one where there's like 3 of them kicking some dude in the head. There's it's seen, and they have their referee and they run around him. He's the old fella, yeah, and it's like they don't obey the tag rule set where you tag in and out. It's kind of like, oh, we run in and then start fighting. Instead of actually, I'm going to say there's a lot of wildness in their matches. There's not a lot of structure. And they focus primarily on doing a bit of comedy as well. And if that's your cup of tea, that's your cup of tea, but I always found it's very predictable. And I couldn't buy them other than being kind of like, I'm not going to say comedy wrestlers, but when you do a lot of comedy stuff in your matches and when you do a lot of flashy stuff in your matches, people aren't going to buy you as legitimate bad guys. They're not going to buy you as legitimate, I'm going to say it's sad, legitimate, like, really a lot. Like, they're just going to go, oh, well, they're on again. And it is disappointing because you can with some of their stuff, they're actually trying, but they're not getting the right reaction, if that makes any sense. They're getting a mixed reaction of, oh, we're sick of seeing you, but we're sick of seeing you, and we hate you. Instead of, oh man, these guys are getting legitimately booed for their actions when no one cares about their actions. And it's disappointing because regardless of their past issues or past action, like getting in a locker room brawl with CM Punk, they seem to be nice guys outside of wrestling and try to do well. And if they want to have fun in the wrestling company, I mean, that's cool, good for them. As long as they obey their boss, that's cool, whatever. Have fun, enjoy yourself. Those are concerns like I did touch on CM Punk, as it is anyone's cup of tea. If you like him, hate him, cool, you know. Like another thing about presentation, with characters as well. I like characters, like my preferences for characters, I like guys like LA Knight. I like Drew McIntyre, current Drew McIntyre. Even, you know, like characters like Damian Priest. Originally I thought, I don't like him too much, but then he's kind of grown on me a bit during the Judgment Day stuff, and I'm like, you know what, yeah, I like him, you know, like I know people might hate him, but it's like, you know, like he's alright. And the women's wrestling has very much improved in every company. There's always going to be people who don't know what they're doing, or I think the biggest issue with wrestling now is they don't have a lot of, their fundamentals aren't polished as they used to. Like they focus more on flash for views instead of polishing the main stuff and working on having character work. And as I said, like when you watch these storylines, and like I say storylines, like that you're there for the story, you know, primarily for the story, you know, like flips and tricks and flashy things in the ring don't draw the viewer long term. You know what I mean? Like you could, for that, I know a lot of people might say, oh, you know, the Will Ospreay and Ricochet match. Great match. And there might have been a story behind it, but I don't know. But when it concerns building up a story, to build up a story, if they had that match and there was like 5-6 months of back and forth where they're having matches and shouting out to one another and say, oh, well, Ricochet can't do this. Well, Will Ospreay can't do that. And if they're calling each other out, having different matches on the indies and it builds up, and even having a YouTube storyline, or like, I mean, I say YouTube because a lot of this stuff was on the independent stuff, like on the independent wrestling circuit. But if they had like a promotion that picked them up and they had about 5-6 months of feuding, like not with each other directly, but having matches and calling each other out and saying, look, you can't do that, well, you can't do that, well, and then they have a final where they correct, and they meet in a tournament or something in Japan, or even somewhere where they have a tournament, they have a match, and Will beats him in, like, in a sneaky way or something, because you have to establish, a good guy and a bad guy dynamic where Rick's like, hey man, you cheated, I was going to do something cool. Well, like, it's establishing a storyline, and then they have that banger of a match. It would sell a lot more. You got to have a storyline in wrestling. It's what's most important. And like, you can do flips and tricks all you want, but we need story to invest in it long term. And you say, like, oh, and I think the biggest issue where people say, yeah, like, wrestling is as I said, fake, and they're not saying it like legit fake. They're using it as a word to delegitimize what these people do, and delegitimize the product, because to them the product is stale and crap storytelling. Crap storytelling, why would you watch it? It's like imagine watching a series like Game of Thrones for the first 5 seasons, right? Great storytelling, great feuding, and then you go to watch something like trash TV, like fucking Jerry Springer or something. You just sit there and go, I feel insulted watching it. And I think that's what a lot of wrestling fans felt. Why invest your time, effort, and money into something when you feel stupid for watching it or feel insulted watching it? Why would you watch it? You don't feel rewarded. You're not given a good payoff. And I'd say, yeah, like for the later seasons of Game of Thrones, and even in the Star Wars movies, people watched it and then were insulted by the director of The Last Jedi. They were insulted and called man babies and children by this butthead who screwed up making the second movie of the trilogy. He killed everything off. Like I say, when it concerns storytelling, it's the most important thing for any product you want to get into, and I mean any TV product, Like, it's one thing that jaded me with wrestling, where I sat there and I went, like, I went, I don't feel good watching it. I feel filthy watching it. I felt insulted watching it. I'm like, well, I'm not going to bother watching it when I've got so much other things to watch. Wrestling fans aren't strictly wrestling fans. Wrestling fans like sports. They like, whether it's UFC or football or any football, either of the footballs, whether it's American football or European football, or out here we have like rugby league and footy and cricket. So wrestling fans don't just like wrestling. If you just like wrestling, I mean, Jesus, I mean, I'm not saying get more hobbies, but geez, you like more than that, don't you? Like, that's how you build your personality. That's how you get more, like. Wrestling fans are more than just wrestling fans, and when they're watching good TV shows and they go back to wrestling and they go, oh, this is crap, and that's the point, whether it's the making the wrestlers look stupid, or making them look weak when they're strong, as they're supposed to be strong characters but they look weak, and it is very hard now in WWE, because when one wrestler loses, there's a fan base that goes, oh, but I like that guy. And then there's other guys. Everyone is on that same sort of tier. There's not a lot of people who are main event guys. A lot of people like, if I were to establish it, and it's stupid to say, but my favourite wrestler of all time is Rey Mysterio. How many world titles has he won? Not many. He's won a few. But he's got consistent work. He's had consistent work. His matches have good ring psychology. He puts on stories in the ring. He's one of the best at it, and I think once he retires, that's where he should be. He should be in that storyline / ring psychology aspect of it, because a lot of wrestlers tend to copy one another and nick moves from one another and do the same crap. It's like, why kill yourself when you don't stand out? I don't know. Like, and it's just the way it is. Storylines build up long-term investment in it. I just don't. I don't get it. It's the most important thing for wrestling. In any TV show, any movie, because people might turn around and go, oh, it's fake. It's like, dude, so is every other TV show. It's the exact same fakeness. The only difference is these people in the ring are legit hurting themselves for our entertainment. And, like, given the recent death of probably wrestling's most biggest icon, Hulk Hogan. I'd say the legit guy, Terry Bollea. I think it's one of those things. People like Hulk Hogan, but they don't like Terry Bollea, if that's how to pronounce his name. And it's you know, it's sad, but I mean, when it's a lot of these wrestlers, you know, when I was a kid, I dreamed, oh, you know, it'd be great to be a professional wrestler. But when you're older, you realise, oh, these guys, especially the guys from the 80s and the 90s, they're in rough shape because they've hurt themselves around entertainment, and they've had to pay for medications, and whether it's prescription or even abuse those medications where they've gone doctor shopping, and had, because they're in so much pain, they've had concussions, they're in serious pain. Like the one thing I learnt later on, I actually looked into, because when I was a kid, when Chris Benoit died, when he, you know, decided to, you know, I'm going to say the actions he took over that course of the weekend, and when he died, there's something about brain trauma, long-term brain trauma, whether it's repeated, I'm going to say repetitive concussions can cause, like I'd say, yeah, they probably could cause some serious long-term ramifications if you keep getting concussions over and over again. We're only learning about how you can be a lot more susceptible to concussions, you know. I've worked with a guy, he was our truck driver. He had he plays football, footy out here, Australian rules, and he said he had a concussion back home. He's from Scotland. He was playing rugby back home, and he had a head knock, and he ended up with a concussion. And he said the first concussion was a really bad one, but the next, like, it seemed to be hard to get one, and the second one, you tend to get concussions a lot easier the more you've had them. And I asked him straight up, because he was my age, and I asked him straight up, how many have you had? He said about 4 or 5. So that's not fucking good, because it's, like I said it like that because it's not. It's not. I asked him, like, do you have any issues, whether it's remembering anything, or he said, like, nah, nothing like that. But he had to, because he ended up getting 2 concussions in like 2 weeks, because he went back straight into sport after a week, after playing. And I hope he's doing all right now, because he's left our company. But yeah, like when it concerns head injuries and stuff like that, and not just anything, I know that's a different topic, but that's why I always put like preference over storytelling over in-ring ability, because in-ring ability will fade, it will slow down, you know, like as I'll point out with someone like Seth Rollins, where Seth Rollins has had to slow down quite a bit, because he's had a lot of knee injuries. And it's like after 10-15 years, once he retires, are people going to go, oh man, like he had really good feuds? Or is he going to be viewed as a Rock, or a Stone Cold, or a Hogan, or anything like that? I don't know. Like, I don't know. Is he close to it? Probably not, which is sad to say, because he's you know, doing very well for himself financially, and I hope he does keep himself in good condition. I mean, he's got kids, he's got a wife, even his wife's a wrestler. But when it concerns like storytelling, that's what people are going to remember. People are going to remember Andre and Hogan. You know, they're going to remember Rock and Austin. These big feuds, even Cena and Randy, whether for good or worse. I always preferred Edge and Cena, but you know, like it's just, people are going to prefer feuds and big storylines over, oh look, that guy did a triple front flip and landed on the other guy. I think the one flip people remember the most is the one that Brock Lesnar did at Mania, where he did that shooting star press and damn near killed himself, landing on his head because he missed Kurt by a bit. And it's like, oh, he was close too. Like, I mean, he was close to Kurt, but people are going to remember those, you know, those big moments, those big feuds, you know. Like, I watched Randy Orton kick Cena's dad. It's one of those things. It's funny in hindsight. It's like, oh man, he hit him really hard. Even Orton hitting Vince, you know, and even Austin and Vince. It's another feud that people, love with the Attitude Era. And it's mostly just it's the storylines. People are going to remember the storylines. People aren't going to remember, oh, he did a triple front flip, or he did a triple super kick, or he did. People don't care about the moves. People care about the stories, and that's just like my 2 cents on wrestling and my introduction to it. I think it's pretty much like my final thoughts. I know I went on a ramble, but it's kind of like this is what happens. Then just going off the top of my head and rambling and carrying on. And so yeah, thank you all for watching, and catch you with the next video.